Before I came to Poland, I'd been told many things, a lot of them tinged with a type of black humour that didn't always help. One girl who'd spent a year in Warsaw had offered me a piece of information by way of reassurance about a month before I left. You can get cornflakes there, she said, with a smile that faded rather miserably once she realised that cornflakes weren't on my list of priorities. I pictured instead the bowl they were in, a deep wooden bowl paired off with a spoon cut from cheap tin that made a harsh sound when dropped on a stark kitchen floor. In that bowl, I saw a lot of soups made from thick vegetables and stringy meat that came from an animal that had worked hard all its life. A horse, maybe. I pictured timber houses, smoke gasping out of chimneys day and night, sitting under the shadow of grey blocks that clawed the landscape like broken umbrellas. I pictured old men with shattered teeth, young girls with bright blonde hair packed under scarves decorated with flowers of spring, fields that were golden in autumn and steel blue in winter, cold vodka, warm beds, and the sound of men singing in taverns, keeping a beat with the thud of beer tankers on long wooden tables. I think it was fair to say I had a rather confused image of Poland before I arrived. So, Tom, this was taken from your book, There's an Egg in My Soup, which was based on your time spent in Poland. And it's safe to say that you didn't know much about the country before you arrived, but you stayed for 5 years. Paint that picture for us, with the facts this time, not your fanciful flurries, please. What year was it when you arrived, and what were your reasons?
Yes, that was 94, Mick. Um, that's a long time ago now. So, yeah, I mean, nobody knew anything about Poland in 1994. All we had was memories of the shipyards of Gdansk, Lech Wałęsa, the odd football game, I think.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we knew nothing. And I was at a loose end in Maynooth University doing a master's in philosophy. And I was waiting for them all to be lined up at the gates to offer me a job after doing a master's in philosophy. I hadn't a clue where I was going to go. And I saw this job in the Irish Times, APSO. APSO are Agency Personnel Service Overseas. I think they're called Irish Aid now. And they were looking for teachers to go to Poland on the invitation of the Department of Education in Poland. So they were looking to get teachers at the state schools across most of the eastern part of the country to sort of improve the English language skills of students. So I ended up, 25 of us, we ended up going to a place called Lublin to get trained. And we spent a week in Lublin, and that was our first introduction to Poland in the summer 1994. And then we were scattered into various different towns and villages across the eastern Poland. And I ended up in a town called Minsk Mazowiecki, about 40 kilometers outside Warsaw. I think I was fortunate actually to end up fairly close to Warsaw. And that was it. So it was kind of like being parachuted in on a mission to go into state schools.
Well, good of you to choose such nice, colourful images, Tom. You say of Minsk, but the most alarming fact is that there's no entry for Minsk in my Lonely Planet guide. And these guides are honest, okay? If a place is good, it says it's good. If a place is a dump, it says so. And destinations, both good and bad, can contribute to the travel experience. But if a place isn't even mentioned at all, then one can only draw one conclusion, which is, quite frankly, there's no reason to go there. Was it really as grim as this?
Well, there was no postcards in the local shops of Minsk Mazowiecki, like we were fairly clueless. Don't forget, this is 94, so there was no internet, okay? There was no mobile phone. There was no phone, full stop. I had only a Lonely Planet guide. That was the only thing I had. And the nearest location to me was Warsaw and a place called Siedlce, which had a prison. So there wasn't a lot to go on. There was no entry for Minsk Mazowiecki. I'd no Polish.
So what did you do?
You basically just muddled through it, but you'd no language. You went down to the local stores where there was no supermarkets really. It was like the old days. Now there was no queues as in those images of communist queues, but you still had to queue when you went in, and there was a counter, there was things behind the counter. And well, you starved until you learned the basic words to find things, like, you know what I mean? You depended on the hospitality of locals and the Polish and the people in the schools and so on. And you just kind of got on with it. But I mean, there was things that were, what we really wanted was to meet each other, because we were scattered in these various different towns. I remember one of the things we had to do was to contact a friend to say, I had a friend called Paul in a place called Sadovny. And to get in touch with him, I had a phone number, which is 4 digits, say 6982. I go down to the local post office in Minsk, and I go into they give the woman the number, and she probably had a seat, and there'd be a booth there, and then she'd say, Sadovne, and you go in and you pick up the phone, and they would patch the call through to you, okay? And this would be a Friday afternoon. That's your lifeline. You wanted to make sure you got somebody on a Friday afternoon to meet. And then somebody would answer the phone, you go, Paul there, and they go, Niema. You heard somebody at the end of the phone going, Niema. And that Niema, you probably all heard it in Poland. It just closes down everything. As soon as a Polish person says Niema, that's it, you're gone. There's nowhere else to go after that. And that's the weekend by yourself. If you couldn't get through to your friend, you know.
Yeah, the challenge of Niema. Yeah, that's true. Actually, you always had to sort of, when somebody said Niema, you knew you had to kombinować. You know, kombinować, I think, means to scheme. So you had to think of, how am I going to get around the Niema? Yeah. Anyway, listen, so you started teaching then.
We were teaching in state schools. Some of us were teachers. I wasn't. You know, we had some basic training in TEFL. I think a lot of people remember TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. It was kind of the last refuge of the arts graduate, you know. Someone who was at a loose end, not sure where they wanted to go, but they just wanted to go somewhere. So they did TEFL. I think you could do it for a week somewhere, like in some bedsit place in Rathmines, and then get on the first plane to Turkey, you know. But look, we did a bit of TEFL training. I had a degree in English and philosophy, and that was kind of it. We did some basic training. That was it. So I was brought from, you know, this background to a school, and it was a state school. It wasn't a private school. And my first class was like 35 Polish girls, you know. Look, there's a lot of worse places.
You write in your book, the first 10 minutes of every lesson was taken up with me making an arse of myself, trying to pronounce their names and admiring their handiwork. But I was quite prepared to make an arse of myself if it meant they got a good laugh and the ice was broken a bit. The curiosity of the students never ceased to amaze me.
But they were great. They were wonderful students, and they were very warm. The English language, there was a variety of levels. A lot of them didn't have any English, but they made an effort, and they were very accommodating. And I would just go in and tell funny stories. Look, you know, the first few weeks in the school, I didn't do much teaching. I used to bring in a guitar, you know, or something. And anything I could do to kind of ingratiate myself and to be made feel a bit welcome, and it worked. They were great. It took me a while to get into the actual language teaching, and the facilities weren't great. I mean, the chalk didn't work. How could chalk not work? When you say chalk didn't work, the chalk didn't work. It was made of quartz or something, and it would just scratch the background. The only way you could get the chalk to write on the blackboard was if you sent one of the kids out with a cloth down to the bathroom to wet cloth and then soak the board, and then you could write on the blackboard. Getting photocopies was, you know, couldn't get it. I didn't even have a textbook. I'd no textbook, so I had to plan my own lessons, just around conversation types of classes. And with 35 Polish students was tough, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that was tough. But you say it was worth it. I mean, it was worth it to such an effect that you scanned some of the Polish money you made while you were there. So financially, what did a teacher earn back in 1994, 95?
3.5 million.
Good.
Yeah, 3.5 million. But it was, I know, and 3.5 million was equivalent of about 100 quid, 120 quid then. And you get paid every month in this big wedge of money. And that would, I mean, we would get topped up from APSO back home, but we'd all, it's terrible to say this, we'd all meet up in Warsaw when we got paid, and most of that would be gone in one night, you know.
Yeah. I understand.
So it didn't stretch very, very far.
Okay.
I mean, it was cheap in those towns and villages to live, you know, so you made it stretch.
Well, you mentioned going to the bars there, and I was struck by this description in your book of the Polish hangover. I'll just repeat. It says, thoughts seem unable to develop. There's a fog there that doesn't seem like lifting. And I'm also bled of the volition to do anything except lie on my back and stare at the ceiling. It's akin to the type of punishment, the type of punishment in the Old Testament where God was a cruel bugger with a dark sense of humor. The vodka hangover also causes the sufferer to experience negative feelings such as doubt, guilt, inadequacy, fear, and forgetfulness. And there's something else I've noticed. For the first time here, I'm actually terribly depressed and feel completely abandoned. So things got dark, Tom. You seem to have done quite a bit of boozing and, when possible, partying. Yeah.
Yeah. God, well, when you listen to that now, I suppose what age was I? Was in about mid sort of 20s kind of thing, and you tended to go out whenever there was a party. And the poles were great. I mean, the poles were great. This is the one thing that really helped with that transition when I got there. The Polish people were amazing. And I got to know, because I was in my 20s, so you got to know some of the older students, and they introduced you to friends and parties and groups and so on. So there was always something to do at weekends. And I met a group of people in a small little village nearby, and they had a band, right? And I had my guitar. I played a lot of music. I had my guitar with me, and they had got permission somehow to convert the basement of a primary school into a club, okay? And they had a stage there, they had a sound desk, they had a bar, and it was incredible. So they got me to join their band as the singer, because they were singing blues, and they didn't really sing in Polish blues. I want to make love to you, So they wanted an Irish singer to sing blues, Irish singer in a Polish blues band. There's a combination. But we had great fun, and we used to have these regular parties in this underground basement underneath the school. But that's what kept me going.
Did you bring a guitar with you?
I had the guitar with me. Yeah, I had the guitar, and we went. We used to do these little tours around the place. They got a van, so like it could end up on a Monday night in some town somewhere. And they were all hard drinkers,
Yeah.
And slowly things began to erode. I mean, you could be coming back at 3 a.m. in a van, and everyone had to go up to school or teach the next morning. And after a few months of that, the band split up. We actually had our last gig in the Irish bar in Warsaw.
Oh, well, hey, listen, a lot of things happen in the Irish bar in Warsaw. And tell us, did you get to meet somebody special, Tom? And can you tell us who this might be?
I did. I think it's a photograph over there, isn't there?
There is. We've shown a few photographs now, yeah?
Yeah, she's on a train. I met her on a train. I didn't. She left me on a train. No, I met Joanna through a teacher in the school I was in. And I met her in the first year. I was over there towards the end of the first year. And 4 years later, we got married, and we had the whole Polish wedding, the whole shebang. Had a busload of Irish guests came over, and you'd be happy to know we're still together.
Did I hear that somebody told me she was the daughter of the head of the school?
No, she was a daughter of the English teacher.
Well, that was handy. So she spoke English then, did she?
Yeah. She was studying law for 5 years. That's probably why I stayed for 5 years, But I mean, I was invited to her house a lot for dinner. You know yourself, Mickey, you get invited to a lot of people's houses, and
Yeah.
I think I would have starved to death the first year if I hadn't met her, because nearly every Sunday, I was invited over for dinner.
Isn't that fantastic?
And the whole spread we put on, so it was fantastic. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the guitar. I mean, we in English we sort of say EADGB, EDGBGE for the tune of the guitar. When you're tuning, how do the Polish fellas do it? Do they say the?
They had a H, I think, for some reason. I don't know where they got a H from. I think they called it BH.
It's all very interesting. I mean, I've always found that the Poles are very welcoming into the family situation, and once you're in, you're in. I mean, you have to wash the dishes, you do the lot, but you don't cook anything. They'll do all the cooking, but you have to clear the table.
They do all the cooking. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I remember I stayed one Christmas and did Christmas spread. I did miss the Irish Christmas compared with, the Polish, but I found it a bit somber, Polish Christmas,
Okay. I agree, actually. I agree. But I mean, actually, my first Christmases here, basically, like there was snow as well. So the amount of snow that we never had in Ireland, the temperature that we never had in Ireland. And I must say, I always enjoyed Sylvester. I really enjoyed Sylvester.
Well, Sylvester just went berserk because they'd been held under for so long. I remember when the bars are closed. The first Christmas, I had to go to a disco, right? I was taken to a disco, and there was no alcohol, The shops were closed. I had no alcohol at home. And the only thing I had was, and I'm going to say this, it's terribly embarrassing, I had a bottle of cough medicine, right? So I drank that before I went to the disco. I didn't think, because I knew there was going to be loads of my students there, and I was going to make an arse myself dancing I might as well have a bit of a buzz because I found some cough medicine. Like somebody on the street who drank a bottle of cough medicine before they went to disco. Anyway,
Well, that's class.
some hangover after that.
So you went to Poland as something of a teacher in the making, but left as the making of something totally different. In that, alongside your music, you got into writing, working with the Warsaw Voice as a column writer, and also putting your first book together, Gabriel's Gate, which would eventually be published back in Ireland after Eggy Soup.
Eggy Soup, yeah. Because I mean, I did always want to get into journalism of some sort. It was hard to break into in Ireland. And when I got into Warsaw more, I began to make contacts in the Irish bar, which is where you make contacts, And I happened to meet somebody from the Warsaw Voice. I don't even know if that's still going over there. And it was the English language paper. It's the only English language paper you could get your hands on, really. They didn't bring in the papers unless you had a subscription to the Irish Times or something. So I started to write. They wanted somebody to write about life outside Warsaw because most of the expats lived in Warsaw. So I had a daily column about all kinds of stuff, moaning basically. Just kind of whinged about stuff really a lot of the time. But it was kind of a bit, and wrote about meeting Polish people and life outside in a village. And I went from there. I did some work for Radio Polonia, which is the English language service. So I had a bit of a portfolio when I got home, And I also started writing a couple of books when I was in Poland. So I had them to take home with me. And then when I got back, I got into magazines, and then to there into the Evening Herald and the Irish Independent. And then you may remember when it was 2003-04, Poland joined the European Union, and there was a flood of people coming over from Poland. And the Evening Herald got the Polski Herald together. So I started working for that.
Okay, that's a fantastic journey. And 5 years to go from sort of unsure student to musician, writer, author, published. I mean, actually, the first book you did was Gabriel's Gate. Did that get published?
That was published. Yeah, that was published by a small press, and that was published. And then The Egg in My Soup. There's an egg in my soup. That comes from the soup, the Jurek. The Jurek soup where you find an egg. I thought that was a bit frightening to find an egg in the soup. That's why I called it.
There's a lot of other stuff in there.
That's the conceit. Yeah, you're finding the egg. So then, the Gabriel's Gate was published. I published a couple of small books for the tourist market about Dublin and Cork. And the last book I did was self-published. I went down the self-published route, Mick, because I'm just getting old and time moves on, and trying to get a book published now, it's horrendous. So this is my first self-published book called The Ghost Song. And I wrote music to go with it. And that's out there. I think you might have seen a couple of videos earlier on today. I think you're going to do one more. Thanks very much as we close this. So it's a self-published book. It's about a singer-songwriter in Dublin, aging, mature, who comes back and tries to make it against all the odds in the digital world. So
that's right, Tom. Actually, I read the book, and I assumed that you were the lead character. So this aging, handsome man that sort of attracted hordes of women, but just wanted to be on his own with his music and wanted to keep his music secret from other people until some girl sort of coaxes him out of his den. Yeah,
that's yeah. And then he gets noticed by a promoter, and then he goes on this journey, and there's a subplot about his daughter and that kind of thing. So, but it really is about how you come up against the digital world now as a certain person of a certain age, and you're competing, and it's how difficult it is. But that's where I'm going now. I have one more book I think I might do as a self-published writer. I'd say.
Okay. So you think sort of musical novels is the way forward for you?
Well, it's all about content, Mick. It's so hard. Like, you just throw a book out there. It's just throwing it out into the cosmos, and you need to have so many things to go with it. You need to get your Facebook page up and your Instagram, and you're connecting to your website, and you have to have content to push out, videos, music, anything at all, blogs, the whole lot. So it's just endless amount of work that has to be done on the promotion side of stuff that you're not getting time to actually to commit to creating anything new. So,
Tom, I tell you, it's been a very interesting journey, honestly. I mean, like, as you sort of, the way you described before to me about leaving Maynooth, sort of joining APSO, ending up in Minsk Mazowiecki, the those telephone calls to ringing people sort of just to make sure that your weekend sort of wasn't sort of you bawling crying, leaning against. I think you described once basically there was a window in your room and you'd look out on the street and it was like it was just cold. It was just like in the middle of winter basically. It was a single pane piece of glass, I think, and it was just cold and miserable. And you've no friends for a week, or yeah, it's tough. But now, listen, Tom,
the great thing about it was good training for the lockdown. Like you got, I'm not being smart, but I'm quite comfortable with my own company. If that sounds, but being able to live with yourself and do things. I have my guitar and writing and all that kind of stuff. In terms of getting into that space, it was good. 5 years by yourself wasn't the worst thing.
Well, you weren't exactly. I mean, you said after year one you met Asha. Okay, so I mean, like that actually took.
He couldn't live with me. You know what I mean? God almighty, he would have been strung up. Catholic Poland.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, good. Listen, you're going to finish with the song, and I'm going to sort of suggest that everyone basically wants to sort of learn more about you. www.tomgalvin.com and your Facebook page facebook.com/Tom Galvin Writer. You go there.
And the music is on Spotify, and it's under the lead character from the book. But if you can go to tomgalvin.com and if you could like the Facebook page. And the book has been getting really good reviews, which is great. So
I gave it one of those reviews, Tom. I gave one of those.
Yeah, yours wasn't a very good review. The other one, thanks anyway.
All right. Well, listen, with that, I'm going to let you go to your guitar. All right. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Happy Paddy's Day. Sorry I haven't got anything green. The only thing I had was a green wheelie bin. I was going to get into that, like that guy from Sesame Street. But
no, maybe not. What was his name? Grover.
I don't know.
Anyway, or whatever. I can't remember his name. Yeah, very good.
Thanks, Nick, and hello everybody in Poland.
Cool.